Imagine the enduring trauma that will haunt the Palestinian people. Victims of violence often experience a range of physical and emotional effects in the immediate aftermath and long term. Some of these effects include hypervigilance, depression, anxiousness, brain fog, and exhaustion, as well as psychological symptoms like headaches, back pain, digestive problems. When these symptoms persist, they can have a detrimental impact on a person's quality of life. Trauma took on new meaning during COVID-19. When the entire nation originally shut down, mental health specialists observed almost immediately an uncommonly referenced and complicated emotion. It was later identified as anticipatory grief, in which people brace themselves for a loss they know is coming, and not only of a loved one, but no longer being able to socialize or connect with one another in a physical way among their losses. With modern science, we don't look for things like unclean spirits anymore. We examine bodies and brains for malfunctions or microscopic intruders. Despite our modern ways, an intense parallel curiosity about the paranormal somewhat surprisingly prevails. Richard Gallagher, a very sane American medical expert, for example, has just authored a book called Demonic Foes: My 25 Years as a Psychiatrist, investigating possessions, diabolical attacks, and the paranormal. Gallagher argues that in modern times, especially in the developed world, many people think the possessed are just mentally ill. Renowned, if controversial, Scottish psychiatrist R.D. Laing once provokingly argued mental illness is a healthy response to a deeply divided world. The reading from the book of Deuteronomy reveals that prophets are always needed to bring healing in divided societies. The interaction between the apparently possessed man and Jesus in Mark's Gospel begins with the unwell man shouting, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us?" We have no idea what trauma this man has experienced, but the reference to destruction suggests that he has experienced acute trauma. The very nature of trauma is to rupture what was once whole. The soul, as the core of one who is no longer in unity with the whole person and needs healing. Diane Silver describes moral injury as a deep soul wound that pierces a person's identity, sense of morality, and relationship to society. When dealing with trauma, the core of one's identity is ruptured, which is why the body is only one part of what needs healing. The body reflects the trauma from without, meaning it reflects pain and suffering in a visible way. But what is happening from within? It is an invisible wound, tearing apart one's identity as a person with dignity and worth. Trauma is not only an assault to the body, but an assault to one's dignity, in which the person may suffer from a sense of inadequacy, guilt, low self-esteem, and lack of trust, ultimately weakening one's core identity. Recently, I found myself dropping my reading material as I paused to consider the story of Dane Galligan. Dane was 24 before he first told someone about the severe depression he had been suffering for over 10 years. Now 37, Galligan runs the outdoor activities company Go Beyond Adventure and is a mental health advocate. Dane speaks about flying off the handle, hating the ways he handled things, hating the way he looked, hating the way he felt. He deemed himself so utterly useless to the planet and to himself and to people around him. While Dane can now openly talk about his depression, he noted that 20 years ago, the language was very different. Over the years, he has found that the more open he has been, the more he realizes he's not alone. Everyone suffers in their own way, in different ways, but there's always similarities. So there's always something you can relate to. Only 20 years ago, people's understanding of depression was very different. Imagine then how different thinking might have been 2,000 years ago. Religious leaders' immediate inclination was to expel the unwell man, but Jesus heals the man and expels the unclean spirit. It is a sign of a deeper healing offered to humanity, namely the healing of our religions and their tendencies to divide us rather than unite us. St. Paul, in his reflections to the Corinthians, wants religion to help people and not to be a halter around people's necks. In 2024, we should understand enough that the knowledge that someone cares for you is crucial for well-being. The Christian mission is to extend care to body and soul of victims of trauma and those suffering mental health challenges, be they from Ukraine, in Palestine, or our neighbor. Amen.